is Blacklisted Radio. It's the 21st day of September 2013. My name is Doug Owen. We're doing this live Saturday morning, each and every weekend, Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. And I want to thank all the people there hanging out at blacklistedраdio.com. You can join the crew. And, of course, it's interactive. You can text me, 512-222-3067. Everything that you need is at blacklistedраdio.com. All right, so pretty crazy week. A lot of narratives, a lot of storylines that we're going to follow, we're going to look into. Of course, we're going to start with the Navy Yard shooting. Have you been paying attention to how this story has morphed over the last 5 days or so? It's pretty interesting. You know, you hate to think that just about everything in the world is some kind of conspiracy that's being orchestrated by nefarious people in the background, different government agencies, black ops, spy versus spy, government messaging to the people, keeping us in check collectively, keeping us in fear. You hate to think those things. Initially, I try to put those assertions that I usually have away until I get a little bit more information. But it didn't take very long before I was looking at this in a much different light. So let's just start off with the official narrative and how it's changed. Multiple shooters, always multiple shooters. Fox News and the rest of the mainstream media that I was watching told me repetitively that I should not listen to eyewitness accounts. They're not reliable. There's a little truth to that. People see all sorts of things when a tragedy happens, or just in general. I do a lot of work where I talk to people and they give me the background on what happened, what led to the demise of said piece of electronic equipment. Well, what happened? Oh, well, the lights flickered, and then we heard a pop, and then we heard this, and we saw that, and smoke came out of this room, whatever it may be. So I do a lot of that kind of stuff just in general with things that are not highly politicized, not national stories, just things that happen in the world. So when you look at any incident, you have to understand that you're looking through the filter of the media for the most part, and what you're getting is not firsthand knowledge, but of course the impressions that people had initially. Multiple shooters, that story went away, just like during the Boston bombing. And 9/11, there's plenty of other cases that we could talk about, but the fact that there is this ID that always happens to fall into place to send the police and the FBI and the rest of the agencies looking to find said killer in the wrong direction happened during the Sandy Hook, the Newtown shooting. They found the brother's ID. Another example, and they went on a hunt for him, and lo and behold, when they found the other gentleman at his home, they were pretty shocked by the fact that he rolled up on them. They're like, whoa, hey, aren't you supposed to be dead? What are you doing here? So that was kind of a shocker, but it's not out of the realm of possibility, right? I mean, the guy could have grabbed somebody else's ID. Maybe he just wanted to have a little bit of a backstory, but that would kind of lead you to believe that there was a lot of foresight into this incident. So initially, my takeaway was we don't have a guy that is politically motivated. If you don't have a guy that has a political ideology, you don't have a gentleman that has a history of violence. You don't have an AR-15. You have a shotgun. That's not part of the script. Just doesn't seem right initially that this is, some kind of staged opportunity. Not to say that the media didn't initially report that it was an AR-15. I mean, it was like there was no need to even discuss the issue. It's an AR-15. We know, of course. That's how they do it. That's how those people kill. They do it with AR-15s. So I initially thought that this may be an organic event. Now I really do believe it's compartmentalized, and it's a tactic being used by a covert agency to embarrass the administration, to put pressure. And so this is a little, in my estimation, and yes, it is somewhat conjecture, but it makes perfect sense that this would be something that's intra-agency, where this is being used either by the NSA or possibly, which would make more sense than the CIA or some of the other clandestine agencies and operations that are going on there, because it doesn't have the hallmarks of something that was highly politicized. They weren't ready for this. The administration didn't have talking points. Dianne Feinstein, she's always got talking points. Anytime anybody's shot in this country, the obvious solution is gun control. That's where the debate always ends up. I think that the gray area of this discussion is more interesting, and that is what most people, I think, are being told, and that is that we need more regulation. We need more government involvement. So those were the initial reports. The initial story has, of course, morphed into much more. We've now found out, yes, there was a stand down. If you didn't hear about this, BBC, let me just go ahead and pull this up. BBC said that the SWAT teams were told to go home. So that's very odd. And not wanting the SWAT team. I mean, when you go back to Boston, I mean, it was door-to-door terror, ripping citizens from their homes or close to there, allowing the state to rifle through your stuff to prove your innocence, that you're not a terrorist harboring other terrorists. In this case, a lot of weird little things have happened. So I've got a few clips, some audio from the initial reports that I think are pretty interesting. And then we'll start talking about the microwave weapons and all of the other things that Mr. Alexis from Texas believes that were being used against him, and very vocal about it. But here is, let's see, the initial Fox story as it played out on that day, on the 16th.
This is a Fox News Alert, continuing coverage of the shootings today in our nation's capital. Here's what we know right now. Law enforcement officials just wrapped up a press conference. At least 13 people are dead, and a dozen or so more are wounded after the shootings at the Washington Navy base. The FBI has confirmed one suspect is dead, and he is 34-year-old Aaron Alexis from Fort Worth, Texas. Officials aren't certain if a second gunman is on the loose, but they are looking for someone who may possibly have had involvement. We have team coverage, Fox coverage, including reaction from the president and more. But we'll start with Rick Leventhal, who was at the press conference, which I hear just wrapped up. Go ahead, Rick. What did we learn?
Yeah, Eric, just minutes ago, the mayor of the city, the police chief as well.
All right, and this actually goes on for a while, and they talk about that they don't know anything. So this is from the day of, and the story is that there's 13 people. This guy goes on to ask some pretty interesting questions about the number 13, and it seems that was maybe the idea. There are 13 people dead. Now it's 12, but
hey, Jennifer,
some of the messaging
I find
here.
it very interesting that 13 people are confirmed dead so far. The exact same number as Fort Hood. We also heard, now maybe you can confirm this, around 9:22 this morning, which is about an hour and 2 minutes after the initial reports of shots fired at the Navy Yard, the Department of Homeland Security came out and made a statement saying, either a statement or an email, I'm not sure, saying that there's no connection to terror.
So anyway, he's making not so much the connection to terror, but the connection to the number 13 and to Major Nidal Hassan, who's now defrocked. I guess he's not a major. Nidal Hassan, who is scheduled to be terminated, killed by the U.S. government at some point in the future. So that was pretty interesting. Of course, immediately, the families are counseled. They took all of the families behind the baseball stadium and put them in buses, and they gave them the debriefing.
The reason we're not learning more about the victims is they're still trying to locate their families. They have a place over near the baseball stadium behind me where the families are being brought and being counseled. And They're trying to not release the identities at this time. We do know that some of the Metropolitan Police were injured in the shooting. There may even be one fatality from that.
So who is Alexis? He's a guy that was in the Navy, electrician, would have went to the same schooling that I went to. So I thought that initially was pretty interesting, just because you're like, wow, okay, who is this guy? Is he real? Because, being somebody who has gone through electrical corps, went through many of the same schooling or schools that he has, I just like to, try to look and see if there's any little nuggets that I can find, little inconsistencies where I'm like, no way, that's not true. Bust them. Because usually if you watch media and they're talking about anything that you specifically know a lot about, you'll find that they're wrong. You're like, whoa. The media has no idea about electrical, displacement theory or any other, stuff that you may have a little bit of an inside tip, a little expertise on. So generally the idea is that if that's true, then most of the stuff that you hear from media is probably pretty wrong or not on point. So let's see. Yeah, so the families were counseled. You had the elf weapon. I thought that was interesting. He carved ELF, which many have now tied to. And immediately I thought of extremely low-frequency weapons and not so much the Dungeons and Dragons aspect that most kind of took away from this, because he was a gamer. He worked at the Fire Bowl, which is kind of funny because it is definitely a metaphor. Well, I mean, it could be completely organic, but I don't think so in this instance. So he's a pothead, maybe. At least that's kind of what they lead you to believe, is that he is maybe a stoner. Because at the same time you had the bomber Sarnev brother, who was a stoner, and that was a big part of it. He's getting high and going to prisonplanet.com and checking out the stories over there, and that leads to terrorism or, whatever it is that the media wants to push. And you can do that with anything. I mean, everything can be politicized. If you go into somebody's home and look through what they read, what books they have on the shelf, what websites they visit, you can get a pretty skewed view of what that person may be into. If you had Mein Kampf, just because you have Hitler's book doesn't mean that you have an affinity for Hitler or Hitlerism. You might have just wanted to read that book and, as a cautionary tale, or to get some insight into the mind of the man. And maybe you're reading Karl Marx. He wasn't actually. He was an economic philosopher, really. He wasn't. He wasn't about controlling government. He wasn't in government. He was just a writer, and I mean, a very influential one. But just because you read him doesn't mean that you believed in what the government tried to create. Lenin, Stalin, and Marxism. Just because you read the book. So immediately I started thinking that, and the fact that his name is a porn star name. There is an Alexis, Texas, that is in porn, and if you've been keeping up with the podcast or just aware of what's happening in the world, you'll notice that most people in these different agencies at the Pentagon and the like are really into porn. So the guy has a porn name. He has a female porn star's name. He's working at the Fire Bowl. He's a Buddhist. He doesn't have an AR-15. He has a shotgun. He has a long history of gun violence and the inability to control his firearms. He is on powerful, mind-altering drugs. But let's be honest, I should be frank with all of you. When somebody says that they're under mind control, that there are microwave weapons being used against them, that people are putting messages into their minds, you have to wonder, the technology's there. The technology is available. It's been, readily used. And if you go back just to the 50s and 60s and some of the declassifications from things like MK Ultra and other weird and sometimes funny plots by the CIA to assassinate leaders, you realize they get into some pretty wacky things. Chasing some guy down and driving him nuts and acoustically attacking somebody that you were able to handle and control for quite some time. I have to ask the honest question. Was this guy being driven nuts? Was this guy being handled? He's got a weird story. And the things that don't add up that make him not a mass murderer, those are even more interesting than things that do. Usually you have to have a middle name. James Earl Ray. you have to have the middle name to become a psychopath, mass murderer, killer. So that's absent. Some of the other things that are kind of notable trademarks or hallmarks of a killer. Now, people have pointed to the sequestering and the lack of security and the lack of ability by the government personnel there at the Navy Yard to protect themselves. Plenty of guns, no bullets. Now, there are plenty of bullets. They're just not being given to the U.S. military. They're being given to people that work at the Federal Reserve, inside FEMA. I mean, there's a lot of bullets being bought by the government, but obviously they are not in the hands of military personnel. And I can tell you from my experience in the U.S. military, prior to 9/11, though, I got out in March in 2001, prior to the day that changed everything, and it was lax. And we would be they were more worried about soldiers honestly shooting themselves because that's more of a threat. That was literally more of a threat in 1997 when I joined the Navy than it may be today or in the past. But the U.S. military, we didn't have a lot of threats prior to the Yemen bombing. I don't think most people in the military, the actual active duty men and women, thought much about global terrorism because it just wasn't a lot of it. The perception wasn't there. I mean, there's plenty of terrorism. There's plenty of bullets and death, but being waged against the United States servicemen and our military, not so much. Isolated incidents. But yeah, I mean, it was all of the idiots that I met in the military, I would be much more worried about them having bullets, having their guns locked and loaded, especially in the Navy. And that's where I think a lot of people's disconnect is. This is a Navy yard. Okay, so there's minimum security and there's minimum reason that anybody would want to go there. These things are pretty drab. There's just not a lot going on. They're just, retrofitting and updating boats. They have a bunch of different yards all throughout Norfolk and in D.C. and other places like that. Even in Jersey, there's still some military presence there, Navy presence. There's a lot of shipyards and the like, but I mean, just not a lot of reason, not a high target, not a lot of reason to have a lot of armed people there. But it shows you that when you have people that are unarmed, they can become prey to one person that has a shotgun. And so it doesn't matter if it's an AR-15. It doesn't matter what type of weapon you have. It doesn't even really matter if it's a gun. You can take a knife and then you can kill somebody who in our society is sanctioned to have guns, and that is a police officer, security guard, other contractor types. Maybe you're a Blackwater guy. You get to have a gun. The general public, maybe not so much. But those things are the takeaways from this. People are trying to learn lessons from all of it. I think that the fact that the storyline is so ridiculous, it has to be an inside job. This is obviously meant to embarrass and shame the military, and also shame the citizenry into giving the government more and more and more money and power. And, in general, they can attack video games. Grand Theft Auto, the latest version, the latest edition came out. Guess what? It's almost, it may have already done this, but I was listening to it. I guess Wednesday, broke one of these days, Tuesday, Wednesday. It came out, and it's going to be the largest selling, grossing, global profit from a video game ever. It was already close to $1 billion. Estimations far exceeded what they had hoped, or the estimations exceeded, you know what I'm saying. They made way more money than they planned on making. Exceeded expectations, obviously. A lot of money. A lot of people blaming that kind of video game on violence. And I think that it's pretty amazing that we don't have more violence in this society, just with the sheer numbers of people we have in this country, in the United States of America, 300 million plus. It's amazing that people aren't shooting up others all day long, every day. I guess, to a certain extent, you do have a little bit of gun violence. Look towards Chicago, and you basically have a population that is a victim society. I've got some stuff on that, too, because Rahm Emanuel is taking a little bit of heat. But let's see. Any other points about the Navy Yard shooting? I mean, obviously, the story has crumbled, and the initial reports are all incorrect. I mean, now, we know about the drugs that he was on, the counseling, the fact that he had the criminal history, the background. Nobody intervened. He was, somebody who probably shouldn't have had a weapon, and that's going to be used as a way to justify universal background checks, more healthcare screenings, mental screenings, selectively taking rights away from those that are not worthy in society, part of the grand bargain. It fits into that meme. As far as the microwave messages and weapons, that seems to be, the tell to the funny takeaway. It shows a little bit of the comedic humor. Notably, there was the SWAT team stand down, which is very suspect. The BBC has not been able. Let me just pull this up. I'm kind of ranting and railing here a little bit. I was going to look this up. Yeah, here, Navy Yard shooting, SWAT team ordered to stand down and leave the scene. Members of a Washington, D.C. SWAT team, who the BBC learned were offered not to respond on Monday. Yo, I have 4. James Freeland, what's up, brother? I have 4? Okay, good. Were ordered not to respond to Monday's Navy Yard shootings and have yet to be contacted by authorities. The Capitol Police Tactical Response Team was told by a supervisor to leave the scene instead of aiding municipal officers, sources told the BBC. Meanwhile, the department has installed a new leader of the elite unit. No reason has been given for the decision. Interesting. Okay, you leave the scene, get out of here, and guess what? Your boss, we don't know what happened to him. He's not here anymore. But here's your new boss. Here's your new elite assassin. Here you go. Suspect. No reasons given for any of it. A little shift of power. That's pretty telling. Maybe there's a completely great reason for all of this, right? Sure. I believe that. Days after the shooting, none of the officers have been questioned by officials or investigators from a special panel that was convened on Wednesday. They've already put together special panels to figure out what to do with these SWAT team guys that were told to turn and leave. It's kind of a little CYA covering of the arse. Members of the Containment Emergency Response Team, CERT, are typically debriefed right away, at the very least the following day after an incident. A Capitol Police source said, quote, they haven't even been given the courtesy of a debrief. They have not been given an answer as to why the decision was made, and they should not respond, the source was adding to this piece from the BBC. So Take that for what it is. It's kind of odd, though. You have a SWAT team stand down. And you also have found this yesterday, and you can go to blacklistednews.com. It's there on the front page if you're listening live. Radios for federal firefighters and police officers failed during Monday's mass shooting at Washington's Navy Yard. So obviously they were whitewashed. They were blinded out. Somehow, some way, wink, wink, all of their radios stopped working. SWAT teams told to stand down. Lexus from Texas is shooting people with shotguns. None of the people on the base have bullets. All right, well, we've spent exactly 33 minutes talking about this topic, so that's nice and esoteric. It's a good point to move forward. Need I say more? I mean, really, how many more weird things have to happen? Of course, the media isn't going to talk about the fact that he's on the mind-altering drugs. At least that would have some beneficial impact to say, hey, look, maybe we shouldn't be giving everybody crazy pills. Maybe we shouldn't, the whole fact that he had, or the story is that he had PTSD, not from war, but from helping people on 9/11. I mean, come on. I can't believe people are trying to sell us this. So it's been a great distraction since Monday. The focus has been on that for the most part. But there's some other interesting things that have been playing out in Syria. Now, when we talked last week, Syria was being hailed as, well, I think an example of how people can use their voice to stop the mass murderers in government, can stop World War III. It's very empowering. Makes people feel wonderful. So what's happened this week? While all of that was going on, while all of the dog and pony show was being watched by the people, there was a lot of ground fighting and a lot of flanking by the insurgency on the ground. I think that's the best way to describe what's happening. Who knows? Mossad, the French, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, Wahhabists, Salafists, others that have interests, and not to mention hordes, huge hordes of death row inmates from Saudi Arabia, from Turkey, from Bahrain, private contractors. We know Dime Corp's there. I mean, it's a little toxic cesspool. So regardless of anything that's being said, on TV, regardless of any of the wonderful strides we made and whether or not we go and tactfully destroy the country's infrastructure with cruise missiles, it hasn't changed a lot on the ground. So Mr. Bashar al-Assad has taken the opportunity to say, well, we'll give you our chemical weapons if and when you give us $1 billion. That's a good round number. If somebody says, how much do you need to get rid of your arsenal? If I was Bashar al-Assad, I'd just come up with an arbitrary number and say $1 billion. And the global government may pay for that. They're going to have to give him cash to get rid of the arsenal. And, hey, that's pretty much standard operating procedure. Whenever you have an opportunity to get some money to do something, you should. So they're saying, well, we need the money. We can't get this, how are we going to destroy all these chemicals? And quite honestly, how are you going to destroy all of these chemicals? But oddly enough, it's brought Israel back into the picture. Why? Because Israel has huge caches of not only chemical, but biological and nuclear weapons to the tune of at least 80 now that we know that are exempt from any inspection by the IAEA and other international United Nations global organizations that monitor such weapons. Weapons inspectors do not go to Israel. So there is a little bit of elitism there, right? I mean, there's certain laws that apply to everyone else, okay, but not these guys over here. Why? Because, they're God's chosen people, whatever it may be. You can throw whatever reasoning you want behind why they are able to exempt themselves, hiding behind the Holocaust and the tragedy that has just, let's be honest, has benefited their political identity so much that it's one and the same. This whole tragedy, ruled by crisis. They have the crisis of the century, of the 20th century, to remind everyone why it's okay that they do what they do. That's not I guess that is my impression, and it's because of the accountability and the selective enforcement of laws. Lots and lots of international laws, things that Bashar al-Assad should definitely kowtow to. But, Bibi, the crew over there in Israel, maybe not so much. Obviously, it's because of the power that they wield. Why else would that be? You have to be pretty powerful to exempt yourself from laws. You have to be pretty rich. You have to be well connected. And, hey, they've got lots and lots of nuclear weapons, so that gives them a little bit of power as well. Not just the fact that they have really invested a lot of their time and effort into taking over our U.S. foreign policy and the rest of the world's. And the people that aren't on board are shamed into silence. So that's interesting because it's brought people to talk about this across the board. Hey, what about Israel? Okay, we're talking about chemical weapons, and the next door neighbor, we're telling Syria that they're bad. Then how can we say that it's okay for Israel, or it's okay for Bahrain, or it's okay for Saudi Arabia? I mean, we talk about people that benefit in the country. Saudi Arabia is one of the biggest benefactors. And the politicization is obvious. I mean, everybody's so upset about Russia going after the gay people. And that's not even true, but the people here, the spokesholes, repeat this ideology that they are anti-gay and that they are living in medieval times in Russia. Not that I'm a big fan. I'm not moving to St. Petersburg anytime soon, but it's just not true. And it shows the demonization by the U.S. media and the bias, the obvious bias. Because if you go to Saudi Arabia, guess what? If you're gay, they will kill you. They will stone you. It's not a matter of fining you, or they shun on it, or they frown on it, or that they don't want you proselytizing to children, the gay agenda. That's what maybe Russia's proposing, maybe. But they just kill you. So, you see, nobody gives a crap about the horrific crap that Saudi Arabia does. Nobody cares about the plight of the gay man or woman in Saudi Arabia. Nobody gives a crap about that on the television. Why? Because, hey, they're sending, and nobody seems to mind that they're just opening up their prisons and sending murderers and insane people into Syria. And that's the MO. Means Israel is just doing that with tons, rounding up tens of thousands of people, the ne'er-do-wells, the undesirables, kicking them out. They have been pretty. I will give them one thing. They being the hospitals and people that are on the ground, caregivers and others, are helping a huge influx of Syrians that are trying to escape this Western war of aggression. So, it shows me once again that people do the right thing. Okay, now governments don't do the right thing, but people that see fellow human beings suffering, usually when it comes right down to it, can put all of the rest of their crap and their beliefs and their ideologies down for a moment to help other human beings. That is the exceptionalism of the human race in general that we're all part of. Anyway, I get so upset because the obvious problem that we have is that it's not evenly approached, I guess, as far as the assistance and the the rules for different countries, and it's so obvious. It's frustrating. It really is. Where Saudi Arabia is okay, but Syria is bad. Tell me why the Saudi Arabians are better. Tell me why these other countries. I mean, here's a perfect example. You want to talk about despot dictators that we support? Here's just a fine example from this morning. Bahrain arrests the opposition leader. The U.S. shrugs. This is out of the Washington Post. It's an op-ed piece, but it speaks to my point here. Mr. Marzoug, M-A-R-Z-O-O-G, Marzoug, has been arrested on Tuesday. He was charged with, quote, inciting and advocating terrorism. Predictably, the Al-Wafaq and other opposition groups withdrew from the national dialogue, which in 7 months had yet to reach consensus. There's that word. Even on an agenda, the charges against the former parliamentarian are perverse, as they always are. They appear to be based on a speech he delivered this month in which he was said to have waved a flag of a militant youth group. Never mind that Mr. Marzoug told the militants in the speech that, quote, the difference between us is violence, and then called on them to, quote, persist with your non-violence. Now, non-violence is very, very effective. Okay? Like Gandhi said, let them beat you. Let them thrash you. Let the people see the blood. Because when they see the blood, the horror, and I paraphrase this, when they see that, they will know who the bad guy, who the enemy is. And it's true. It's absolutely true. When you see kids sitting, at a California college protesting in silence or holding hands, and then you just have thugs kicking them in their face, spraying them with chemical weapons of mass destruction. Well, it paints a picture, doesn't it? You have to say, well, who's the bad guy here? It's very black and white. Somebody is in the wrong and somebody isn't. There's a reason why this guy is shooting these other people with chemical weapons in their face. Is it justified? It's pretty easy to see that it isn't it? Should be for most people that have a heart, most people that are not dead inside. So Mr. Marzoug, he called on the youth to embrace nonviolence and peace, and, well, that's why in Bahrain, if you're an opposition leader and you have momentum and you're teaching the youth to do the right thing, not the wrong thing, it only makes sense that they would put him in jail and charge him with terrorism. Now, terrorism, it's great because the U.S. wants to find terrorists, right? We're on a mission to rid the world of terrorism, the shadowy enemy of the empire, the rebels, the insurgents, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, all of these groups, the Taliban. They're now our friends in franchising in countries like Bahrain, by the way. They've got a freaking office there. I don't even have an office. These guys, they're international terrorist organizations. They've got a P.O. box, and apparently nobody gives a crap. Anyway, I know, it's so silly. It's silly. So these are the people that are good guys, the ones that make sure that we continue to radicalize the youth in places like Bahrain. That's a good idea. Sounds great to Doug. But it's just one of the many examples, many of them that you can find at blacklistednews.com right now. I wanted to talk about some of the other things. Let's see, we've got about an hour 15 left. We're moving right along. Let's talk about the iPhone. Hey, I got an email today from a guy that said, Doug, love blacklistednews.com on my computer, on the phone, not so much. You need to get a responsive web design, something that makes it much more phone friendly. And I agree. We look at those kind of transitions, and the technology that we use is changing to interact, and it's just not phone friendly. You got to scroll around a little bit. It's not unusable. I go to the website, but things are changing. You have to kind of rebuild a little bit to accommodate those that use phones now more than anything else. Now, I I knew that people would want the iPhone, the gold iPhone, the 5S, the iPhone NSA. That I should just play this because it's kind of funny. Joy Camp, who is a really, really funny group of guys that do these skit comedies to kind of look at phones. There we go. What's up, Charlie McGrath? Good morning. We're live, my friend. Where'd it go? iPhone 5 NSA. Let's see. Here it is.
iPhone 5 NSA is the best surveillance device to date. It is a meticulously designed tracker, recorder, and data collector. Every single government agency, authority, and police officer has been considered to make sure iPhone 5 NSA can keep you safe and protect your freedom. This care, this consideration, that extends to how we collect information pertaining to you and everyone you know. And it's what led us to create Touch ID, the largest name-to-fingerprint database in the world.
Touch ID defines the next step of how we use your iPhone. With just a touch of your home button, Touch ID reads your fingerprint so you can collect the latest apps or purchase shiny new Apple products, while we track your location through GPS and transmit data back to corporations and government.
Our employees are literally working around the clock, in some cases 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, to assemble each iPhone 5 NSA individually. And now we require all of them to sign an anti-suicide pledge to ensure our production meets the consumer's demand. And just in case that doesn't work, we've installed suicide nets all along the perimeter of our 24-to-a-room dormitories to gently catch even the most demoralized and broken down souls and safely return them to the workplace, so there's enough iPhones for you and your entire family.
iPhone 5 NSA uses speech recognition technology, so you don't have to bother yourself with remembering things or consulting your brain for any information ever again. Just ask it for the time, the day of the week, what your name is, sports scores, anything really. You can ask it anything. It puts your brain in your hand and into our database.
We've also developed what we like to call blackout technology, which allows authorities to block video and photos whenever they feel your security is in danger. For instance, if a political rally is ambushed by a conspiracy theorist demanding answers, the police can black out every phone in the crowd, so his questions are never heard or seen by anyone.
Reporters, do your job, please. Ask some questions.
And once he's silenced and his coordinates are locked in, iPhone 5 NSA takes care of the rest.
And they blow him up.
Just a question, man. How are we supposed to know the truth when we can't even ask a question?
So there you go. Oh, there we go. Sorry. I had my monitors up. There we go. iPhone NSA. It's pretty much true. The sad reality is that they could build these phones here in this country, provide jobs and decent jobs, maybe even minimum wage jobs in places like California that want to give people $10 an hour. Woo! You could probably pay people $10 an hour and still make bazillions of dollars, billions upon billions of dollars. Corporate greed and, hey, let's be honest, the people's insatiable appetite for phones. So I think about the phone world, and I have a new evil phone around here somewhere. I've talked about the hack aspect of not having to be online or to have a plan where you pay monthly. You can just use the Wi-Fi aspects, and then you get geo-targeted when you go online, and you can even buy pouches and satchels to block all signals to and from your device. If you want to go to that extent, those options are out there now for people, and there's a lot of people that do, but I'm sure if you buy one, people are like, aha, there's something you're up to. You don't want to tell everyone. And by saying everyone, I mean not just the people in your friends list, but everyone in government, everything that you're doing. Anyway, People are excited about the iPhone, very excited about the iPhone. And I titled this clip, iPhone Bum Fights, and it's pretty appropriate for what's happening today or yesterday when the iPhone 5 came out a couple days ago. I didn't keep up with it, but I know people are really, really excited, as you can tell.
How far would you go to get the new iPhone? Some people here in Southern California went to extremes to get the highly anticipated new device. KCAL 9's Amber Lee is live in Pasadena, where some people even paid others to stand in line for them. Amber?
Yeah, Juan, I just got to tell you, out of all the iPhone sales that I've covered, I've never seen the type of chaos that we saw early this morning. But after all of that was said and done, it was back to business here at the Pasadena iPhone store, or Apple store, that is. Take a look. 4 hours after doors open, there is still a line.
Still a line.
The
Oh,
highly
my God.
anticipated iPhone 5S and 5C sale went from anticipation to anger.
Uh-oh.
To tense. 2 people were arrested in 2 hours after the iPhone 5S and iPhone 5C went on sale. Police say the 2 were cuffed for fighting in public for separate incidents. And that's because in Old Town Pasadena, it wasn't your average Apple customer standing in line.
No.
I was asked if I want to stand in line to help someone get an iPhone, and they're going to pay me. So am I sure? Why not? No, so do.
Overnight, dozens of people were brought up to Pasadena from downtown LA from the Midnight Mission area. This man, who did not want to tell the media his name, says he brought them here.
The phones are for me. I have a company that resells the phones for a higher profit.
In order to buy an iPhone, people needed to line up and get a voucher. There was a 2-limit voucher for each person in line. And this man says he paid them $20 for each voucher and provided them with
Always
food
some
and cigarettes
scummy
while they
bastard
waited.
making some
It's not
money.
illegal. It's not against the law to buy. I'm buying them at full retail price.
One spot, the man says he then sells the iPhones overseas for more than $1,000. So if you do the math, that's one big profit margin. But once the doors opened and the buying frenzy started, the Apple store quickly capped the man's purchases, so he only walked away with a few bags in hand. That's when the crowd got unruly. The pushing and shoving started because people say the man didn't pay them for the vouchers. Police then had to escort the man out of the area so the crowd didn't go.
Yeah, so they were about to go ballistic on him, and he's like, hey, buddy, come on, man. I brought these guys from L.A., found a bunch of transients, put them on a shuttle, gave them some money, helping these people out. Now, there's a lot of homeless advocates that get upset, and this is odd to me. They get upset when you give people money or give them tasks to do for money. Case in point, at the, what was it? Austin, it's not Austin City Limits, South by Southwest. I don't remember if it was Clear or one of the other wireless companies, but they'd basically given a bunch of people T-shirts. People, by that I mean homeless people, T-shirts and these different hot spots to carry around in backpacks to blanket coverage of the festival, this huge festival where you just have tens of thousands of people disseminating in one location, and they're all on their iPhone NSA trying to take pictures and stream audio and video, and it just becomes a nightmare. So for people on their phones, now that we have this phone-centric society, it becomes chaos and madness for them. My phone doesn't work. I can't call anybody. It's not a good deal. People freak out. It's like, well, it's a big consideration. I've got a friend who lives down there, and he says every time they have some, huge event, you can't get any self-service because there's just so many people that disseminate it, on a Saturday to some location. I could see that. So they had these guys, homeless people and gals, walking around with these, basically paying them to be banners and hotspots for this event. Yeah, it's, I can't say that I think it's moral. I think it's kind of an amoral issue. But if people want money, God only knows what they're doing for money to buy drugs that are 10 times as bad and probably committing crime. So it's not criminal, or people taking it. They get upset. They're like, "Oh, you can't take advantage. You can't take advantage of these people." It's like, I think that they're already taking advantage of other people, and this kind of a symbiotic relationship. Isn't that okay? I don't think that you should, hire guys and give them crack to fight with one another. That's what they were doing, making lots of money with these videos. I don't know if they made money, but they could have. Went pretty viral with bum fights, basically paying bums to fight one another. And yeah, you're paying people to hurt each other, and the outcome is, not good for at least one person, not good for either person. So yeah, and it's illegal, and there's assault, and there's other aspects to that. But that's one example where that's abusing the homeless. But something like this where you're paying people to stand in line for iPhones. It's kind of scummy, but it just shows you how people are just driven, and they can make so much money off the consumer society. People are so excited, and it's really Apple's fault. They want to create this hype. If anybody's to blame for this, it's Apple, only giving people one voucher and this making it artificially scarce. The iPhones. I think that they do this intentionally. Nintendo, just about any electronics company that unveils their technology and sets it phone companies have been doing this for quite a while, but any kind of big technology thing, that's where you usually see it that is coming out. They usually only allow certain places to sell them, and you just have tons and tons of people. You have a demand that far outweighs the availability. A perfect example is these Black Friday sales at Walmart, where they basically let thousands of people that are desperate, and they're there because they want to get these electronics at ridiculously low prices, and there's only so much availability. Should people beat up one another for a VCR? Shows how dated I am. Sorry, I mean a Blu-ray player. That's horrific. That is what happens. And so they ask for this by doing, by limiting the amount of people and charging them so much for said item, creates this huge, huge draw. And I guess that's, for anybody out there that's a communist, all of you commies, that's probably one example of capitalism that you can, point to and to show how it can be abusive, and it is crony capitalism at its finest. And let's be honest, the people themselves, they deserve just as much blame. If you're kicking people for consumer electronics at some sale, if you're standing in line for hours and days waiting for some movie or electronic item to become available for you to buy at full retail price, you are part of the problem as well. So that's iPhone. Louis C.K., who's a comic that I really do enjoy, he has these really inappropriate and awkward skits that he writes, and his comedy is kind of that shtick where it's more appalling and shocking than it is, hook, line, and sinker. The art of comedy is just a little bit different. It's definitely more morbid in a lot of cases, but he just speaks a lot of truth to power. When you really think about the phone craze, he talks about how this has degraded society, and I see it with the kids. It's weird because it primarily, and he doesn't talk about this, but primarily it seems that girls are more apt to be really phone addicted. Facebook, a lot of these things, the technology is really, and not geared really towards females. At least it doesn't seem that way to me, but has been really embraced by more females. And then, of course, if you can get chicks on board, the men will follow. So here's Louis C.K. If you're not familiar, he's a pretty funny guy, but if you're the faint of heart, and if you're not, if you don't have a sense of humor that's pretty dark, you might not like him. You got to kind of be dark or in a dark mood to enjoy some of the things, and some of them just make you, cringe. But I think he's on the point when it comes to phones.
Some parents really struggle with, like, all the other kids have the terrible things, so my kid has to. Yeah, let your kid go and be a better example to the kids. Just because the other stupid kids have phones doesn't mean that, okay, well, my kid has to be stupid, otherwise she'll feel weird.
Right.
I think these things are toxic. I don't, especially for kids. It's just this thing. It's bad, and they don't look at people when they talk to them, and they don't build the empathy. Kids are mean, and it's because they're trying it out. They look at a kid and they go, "You're fat," and then they see the kid's face scrunch up, and they go, "Ooh, that doesn't feel good to make a person do that." Right. But they got to start with doing the mean thing. But when they write "you're fat," then they just go, that was fun. I like that. So
that tasted good.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, you need to build an ability to just be yourself and not be doing something. That's what the phones are taking away.
Yes.
Is the ability to just sit there like this. That's being a person, right?
Yes.
No one can, you gotta check. Because, underneath everything in your life, there's that thing, that empty, forever empty. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Yes,
just
I know what you're talking about.
That knowledge that it's all for nothing and you're alone. It's down there. And sometimes when things clear away, you're not watching it, you're in your car, and you start going, oh, no, here it comes, that I am alone, like it starts to visit on you. Just the sadness.
Yes.
Life is tremendously sad just by, being in it. And so you're driving, and then you go, that's why we text and drive. I look around, pretty much 100% of people driving are texting.
Yes.
And they're killing, everybody's murdering each other with their cars.
Yes.
But people are willing to risk taking a life and ruining their own because they don't want to be alone for a second. Because it's so hard. I was in my car one time, and a Bruce Springsteen song comes on. And it made me really sad. It's like Jungle, what's the one, Jungle song?
Jungleland.
This one where he goes,
all right, so anyway, he goes on, talking about how people need to be by themselves. How can you think? You're always talking. Find myself in that predicament, especially when I do this podcast. How can you think? You're just talking for 2 hours. How can you do that? That's a lot of talking. Must be hard to talk for 2 hours. It's like, yeah, it's hard to talk for 2 hours, but really, there's just so much stuff that's really happening in the world that it's not. Anyway, so, I think that phones have their place. Cell phone technology, obviously, keeping people connected is not necessarily a bad thing, but always being connected and having not having the ability, or I guess the discipline to be able to be by yourself without communication, it just lacks in the society. We are connected. We are fully integrated. And I remember this, back in the day, kids, back when there was pterodactyls and we had just discovered fire, we had rotary phones. And, if you called somebody and they were on the phone, it was just busy. You just had to wait. There was no other alternative. And then they had, call waiting. I remember call waiting being a big thing, and we'll look at where we're at today. Like you said, people killing one another just so that they do not feel alone. All right, so I did want to talk about the phones because we do have a huge amount of people that listen to the show and go to the websites via their phones, and I do as well from time to time. But you gotta. Well, I strive to get off of the grid from time to time. It's hard, but you realize immediately it's kind of like giving up sugar for a few days. You're like, wow, I feel better. I feel much better now. Those kind of things. You're like, oh, I love it when I go and get away. When I go to the coast or camping or just get away from the technology. Even if you have it with you, just getting away from it. And, not having something that's always hanging in front of you, some obstacle, some task. It's really, really refreshing. It's really nice. And somebody like myself usually has a lot of things going on. Like most Americans, I mean, not, just me, but I always feel like, I guess I have an obligation to put up news and to continue to keep up with stories, so that way I can remain somewhat relevant. You feel like you're in a chase to keep up and to maintain, I guess, the full understanding of what's really happening versus what's being portrayed on the television, if that makes any sense. You're trying to, I guess, be, in effect, an amateur historian, trying to remember what the story should have been, what the history should have been, as opposed to the way it will be written. And that keeps me going. That keeps me constantly assessing the world around me, because I feel that is the tragedy. And that is the tragedy when you do historical research, is that you know that these these accounts are only by the winner in most instances. And many, you go back more than 500 years, how much of that is really true and how much of that is fable, fact and fiction, and how much of it has been compromised. And then you just have to kind of realize that it's about morality, right and wrong, black and white. You get caught up too much in the gray matter of ethics and what happened. Before you know it, you excuse evil. So that's what we try to do, is hold people to account. Remember the way it really happened, as opposed to the way they will try to teach my children at some point that it happened. And, that's the lost history that is happening every day. So there you go. And that's a burden. Other people, they just don't want to be alone. They want to talk with one another. They want to have others that are thinking about them to know that there is love, because we don't have enough of that in this society. And the more that you go into that technocracy aspect of trying to feel warmth and feel love and purpose, I think the colder and sadder you will feel, to be quite honest. So let's just talk about Google wanting to be your doctor. Old Thinker News, Daniel Taylor has this piece, and I don't know how much of it. Some of it's a little hyperbolic in the brain chipping, Google wanting to put a brain chip into you, and I think the idea is kind of antiquated. The idea that they have to put a chip into your mind. It's going to be much more than a chip. An oversimplification is, it's going to. And when I think of brain chip, I think somebody's like putting an EEPROM, like a 32-pin DIN port chip in my head. Like, there's your chip, sir. I mean, chip is, it's kind of an antiquated notion. Neural interface. It wouldn't just be some brain chip, like an RFID chip. There's only so much technology there. But I like where it's going, and the idea is that you are going to have your mind. The chipping is an analogy to having your mind controlled by technology, at least in my mind. I mean, when people say engineering wants you to have brain chips, it's like oversimplification. It's a new world order, people. What does that mean exactly? Who's instituting this, and who benefits from the overall system? So those are buzzwords that, unfortunately, kind of conspiracy theorists and those that are kind of wacky grab onto. Man, you weren't ready for your brain chip, dude? Want that chip, man? They're going to chip your brain, and then when you go to the grocery store, they're going to scan your brain, and then they're going to, give you only 2 cups of Starbucks coffee as opposed to 1 or 3 or something, man. It's like, nah, bro. Simmer down. Google is launching a healthcare company, though, which is way worse. It's way worse than brain chipping anybody. It's called Calico, in partnership with Arthur Levinson, former chief executive of Genentech, the first genetic engineering company founded in 1976. Google will strive to, quote, significantly expand the human lifespan, end quote. So excited. Now, I don't believe them. Okay, I'll tell you why I don't believe they want to expand the human life. And that is because most people in government want less people. They want people to die. That's why they wage war, right? I mean, otherwise, we wouldn't have all of this killing. The government didn't want to kill more people on this planet. they wanted to enrich them, I think that they would feed them rather than using them as lab rats for Monsanto and the pharmaceutical industrial complex. I'm just saying. It's the new term. I'm just saying. Don't mitigate what you've just said by saying, just saying, bro. No, you're not just saying. Quit trying to diminish your thoughts or your opinions. For God's sakes, if you ever say just saying after something you said, you might as well have just not said it. You might as well have just sat there and not relayed any information to anybody. You should have just looked at them or looked down at your phone. So anyway, the idea is that Google can help you extend your life. Why? Because they know everything that's happening. Google has been taking results from what you search about your health, my health, whoever's health, and putting that into a huge database and giving that information to not only the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. They've been giving it to the World Health Organization. They've been giving it to the federal government because you never know when you're going to have a pandemic. And they've been monitoring flu symptoms, and that's just one of many other things that I'm sure that they are monitoring. And, of course, all of that information is being sold to companies that monitor and profit and do research and sell research and create products to help you live longer. So if anybody can be your long-term doctor, it's Google. And this is the thinking. This is the rationale. I've got a really interesting clip that's linked to here in Daniel's piece here that kind of expands on this idea that Google would know more than your doctor. Now, if you go to thanks to Obamacare, whether or not it's funded or defunded, that's the debate. Can we continue to pump more debt into the economy, the tapering? If you've been watching the headlines, listening to news, that's what they're talking about. Can we continue? Can the government continue to spend more money that it takes in? At some point, that is no. The answer is still yes, but the point is that now they're going to defund the Obamacare. What that ultimately means for your health care, I think ultimately, no matter what happens, it means less health care, period. I don't care if you're right or left or whether this fails or completely succeeds to the dream of those in places of power that want to have this complete full spectrum dominance over your healthcare system. Whoever wins the debate, Ted Cruz or whoever's on the left, Nancy Pelosi, the lovely lady that told us that we have to wait and pass the bill to know what is in it. Actually, where's she at? I know that this is one of the few things that I can attribute to Pelosi.
To pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
They passed the bill, and now we're finding out what is in it. And we're not as excited collectively as Nancy Pelosi was about that, were we? But that's all right. Regardless of who wins this debate, people are going to pay more. Regardless, you're going to pay more, and you're probably not going to be with the doctor of your choosing. Thus, there is the place where Google steps in. You say, how does that work, Doug? Well, Google's always watching you. Google has a long-term, multi-year history of everything that you've had, all of your aches and pains. Google probably knows about what medications you're taking, probably knows if there's complications, can consult IBM and the new high-tech doctors of next year. Watson, other quantum computing, hopefully non-biased computers. See, problem with people like money, right? Your doctor likes money. You go to the doctor's office, he's like, hey, what's going on, Doug? I said, I saw this commercial, and it said that Lunesta might be right for me. And he's like, as a matter of fact, Lunesta's paying me money, and I think it is right for you. So, your doctor, he's got an agenda. He's got bills. I mean, to get out of college, how much debt you have, It's a lot of money. I understand that. Got to do something. What are you going to do? You become a drug dealer. Just rich people do it. Poor people do it. It just depends on who's your supplier, whether it's crystal methamphetamines or Adderall. It doesn't really matter to me. You're just getting wired up. One's for people in trailer parks, one's for people in multi-million-dollar mansions and on college campuses. It's different. It's a little different. Same stuff. Different people that you go to. So he's got an agenda. Google, who knows? It might just be algorithms. Does the IBM Watson computer want to kill you or extend your life? Ostensibly, it's to extend your life. That's what this is all about. Google chairman Eric Schmidt, who has a lot of interesting quotes attributed to him. I give him the best one, and that is saying that most kids will have to change their names because they are destroying their ability to be hireable in the 21st century by putting everything that they do online, all of the crimes they commit, all of the people that they have sex with, all of the lewd acts, wild benders, taking pictures, videos, putting it all online. So Google knows that. So does Eric Schmidt. He said you're going to have to get rid of your indiscretions. I mean, and I can relate. People could have hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of Doug Owen admitting things that probably make me unhireable and overly opinionated. Some of you out there listening to this podcast, probably the same. So that's where Google comes in, because Google knows you. Google knows your lifestyle. This guy drinks a lot. He probably has he's probably has a weak immune system because, he only eats 2 times a day and drinks dinner and lunch. Maybe that's why you have liver cirrhosis. Google figured it out. The Calico system here knows more about you than your doctor. It's kind of weird. It's weird when you think about that. Has more context. You mean you just meet some a-hole that wants to sell you drugs when you go into the and not to say that to all doctors. I know tons of really great doctors that are homeopathics, that do not push drugs, that push preventative solutions, eating better, exercise, all the things that Americans don't want to do. I don't even want to do them, and I know I need to. Versus what some people believe is good for them. At least I know what's bad for me and have a pretty good idea of what I should do. Put you, most of you listening, 99% of you ahead of 99% of the general population. Anyway, up until now, back to Daniel's article here. Radical life extension has been a subject discussed by niche groups, think tanks, and tech executives far out of reach for the general public. So one thing, I think a lot of people hate the life extension technology. They're so pissed off about it because it's something that Ray Kurzweil can afford, not Doug Owen, not Sally Soccer Mom. These people, they're going to live forever and become gods through technology, and they're going to enslave all of the poor, crappy people like myself. Could happen. It's a reasonable concern. The UK Ministry of Defence published a 2006 report titled the DCDC Global Strategic Trends Program 2007 to 2036. So that's looking out a little bit. The report outlined possible scenarios surrounding life extension. The report states the divide between those that could afford to buy the longevity, the life extension technology, and those that could not, could aggravate perceived global inequality. Dictatorial and or despotic rulers could potentially also, quote unquote, buy longevity, prolonging their regimes and international security risks. And I attribute most of that to the alternative media. I have to be honest. The idea that you can't extend your life is, here's the first thing. Most people could just do simple things in their life to extend your lifespan. You want to live eternally forever? That's creepy. If you're trying to put your head into some computer, it seems, at least right now, a little silly, a little early. Premature is the word I'm looking for. A little premature. Ready to stick a chip in your brain? Probably not. I'm not there either. But there are things that you can do okay, as an individual to extend your life 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Most of those are lifestyle choices. Now, you can buy superfoods, you can juice, you can give your body all the things that you need. If you're a guy out there, you can adjust your testosterone. You can now go and, in your 50s and feel like you're in your 30s. Those things are available to anybody and everyone. And so the idea of living a better life, to me, is more important. When it comes to longevity, I mean, I don't want to be 130 years old, riding around in some, high-tech machine that is my new avatar. Those that fear that reality and those that want that reality, I think, are both paralyzed by the shock of it all. Don't be paralyzed by the shock. Think about it now and where you stand on it, and at least have a discussion about it, because I used to freak people out 10 years ago talking about mind chips. Brain chip, man, putting a chip in your brain? That's crazy, Doug Owen. That's crazy. You're a weirdo. Black helicopters. Now, it's not a big deal. Now people are like, yeah, well, that's pretty cool. That is pretty awesome. Look at that. I don't even have to think. My Google Glass lets me look at Google porn. It's awesome. Helping myself by extending my life through my neural interface. So, trying to give people the shock and awe, I realized that, that doesn't really matter nearly as much as having the conversation and talking about these things. And more of it becomes that it smacks of elitism. And I think that that's the kind of push that we've seen in this. People have the ability to have it, and then others do not. Daniel kind of taps into that a little bit, some of those worries that the general population. But, being a person that believes that, it's the quality over the quantity in everything, wink, wink, I'm not interested in living forever. I just want my life while it's here to matter. And I don't think that going and eating a bunch of crazy, having my skin rejuvenated or plastic surgery or other upgrades to my body is going to fulfill that need to, and I'm sure there are some people that feel that way, but I don't know. There's just no allure for me. It's not a very compelling idea, if you will. So, just to kind of wrap up some of the technology and the phone stuff that we've been kind of looking at, and that's your new neural interface. That's the most important one that people have today. And it's going to continue to progress to wherever it goes. At some point, it will go beyond the eyeballs, and it'll just directly tap into your visual nerve system, your visual cortex, and probably just shoot messages into your mind. People may or may not want that. I don't know. Ugh, scary. Because that's what some people want. Constant interaction, constant interface. And, we don't want to be bothered with driving. We want to ride around in our Google cars and, watch kitty cat videos. People are already there in a lot of regards. People really are, some of them. But I don't know. If it's not that, it'll be something else that they just fall into. Al Franken, who used to be a comedian, and this is the ongoing thing, the few people that matter in media that are political, I think, bigwigs, besides, maybe Anderson Cooper and a couple others, are people in comedy. Rachel Maddow, Bill Maher, Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert. Just 4 names, and I'm sure there's plenty of other comedians that are now very important in our political system. Al Franken's a guy that went from a jokester on TV to kind of a jokester, I think, in where's he in? Where is that? Maryland? I think he's in Maryland. He's a Democrat. He wrote a book which basically was just an attack piece against Ann Coulter, that I thought was pretty funny. And I read in the early 2000s when I was becoming more politically aware, and it's like, wow, this guy makes a lot of sense. makes a lot of sense, and he's funny. And I know why it works so well, because that was one of the first political books that I really sat down, at least after getting out of the military and really starting to focus more on what was currently happening in domestic politics. And, wow, a lot of wacky people out there. Al Franken's one of them. He has arrived in the United States Senate, and he's also become a chairman of the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Privacy. So he doesn't take that with a grain of salt. He also looks at technology law. He has made it his mission to raise questions about tech issues that he feels are improper, unjust, or just downright questionable. The debut of the new iPhone S5 or 5S, replete with fingerprint reader, has now also gotten Franken's attention. On Thursday, the Minnesota senator published a letter to Apple CEO Tim Cook raising questions about the logic in making fingerprint readers more mainstream. Hey, yeah. I mean, it's pretty mainstream. Some of you, to go pick up your children, have to use your thumbprint. There's plenty of places where retinal scans are becoming the new norm. And now this has come home through iPhone. And this is going to be the first big rollout of biometrics where your kids are going to be begging for it. So usually kids are not begging to go into some secure military facility with their thumbprint, or in some high-tech bank in London where they have fingerprint scanners. This is coming to everyone. So the debut of the new 5S has this I guess, precedent-making or first-time rollout of this technology. Microsoft did it with a couple of their laptops. They've toyed around with the idea. There's other technology, but this is the first rollout for the average man and woman. Anyway, it's a good question. Will they be able to use this data via the Patriot Act? Are they keeping a fingerprint database? Are they going to be creating a database for the... not that they don't already have this, pretty much. I mean, they're taking blood samples from all of the babies. They're taking your DNA at every chance. They are swabbing people, and not even people that are necessarily found guilty of crimes, just charged by the state. And it's really hard in this day and age to not be charged by the state in some form or fashion. So, yeah, I don't know if that's going to be... I think more of it's just this whole idea that, to getting us used to this next level of security in this high-tech prison that is being built. Only in Romland, I wanted to mention this. We were talking about the people that are murdered in the most fantastical of ways. We started the show with the Navy shipyard shooting, and people really want to psychoanalyze and understand the mind of the murderer and all of that, and the media only facilitates that by constantly focusing and really making heroes of these deranged people. So, Bloomberg, I will give some credit to, had a great piece on their website just showing how much more likely you are to be struck by lightning, the ridiculousness of this fear that we have, this unjustified fear that terrorist lone gunmen are going to shoot us. And there's so many of these examples where you are so much more likely to be, 10 times more likely to be killed by a cop than you are a terrorist or a lone nut. I mean, that's even more rare in this day and age. I mean, there's plenty of pretty nutty people, but it's very unlikely you get killed by one. So anyway, this is what's happening in Chicago. And, of course, if you've been keeping up with Chicagoland for a while, it is pretty, insane. I mean, I used to go to Chicago when I was in Great Lakes going to school in the military. I would spend most of my weekends in Chicago. We'd ride the trains there and go through Evanston and hang out and crash parties, and it was pretty cool. I've slept in the train stations in Chicago, pretty inebriated, amongst the ne'er-do-wells in society and people that are homeless, and things that I should have been pretty fearful of doing. No problem. But today in Chicago, it's much different, much scarier. And that was, late 90s. We didn't even worry about, should have been, but was never even robbed, hanging out in, 2:30, 3:30, roaming downtown Chicago. Wouldn't do it today. It's changed a lot. So they've come up with a solution. Safe passage worker this week, this is the headline, hit woman, stole benefits card. Chicago has set up this safe passage routes for children to get to school. And this is because they don't have enough gun control, according to them, without being shot at. So kids can go through these safe routes, and they've had this big PR campaign pushing the safe passage routes. You start realizing, like, wow, I mean, this is like Iraq or something, where you have the green zone. This is the place where, you have this agreed to truce, a ceasefire. So, I mean, really, it's that bad. So anyway, the safe passage routes include monitors along the way. It was always questionable as to how safe the passageway routes would actually be. But this is Ramland, so things always go to the next level. That's from Robert Wenzel from the Economic Policy Journal. And he quotes here CBS Chicago, who explains that the safe passage workers for Chicago Public Schools allegedly struck a woman and stole her Link benefits card. So these are this isn't some gang member. This isn't some out-of-control crazy person that targeted those in the safe zones. It's the people that are hired by government to protect you that end up being the criminals in some cases. Lashia Brown, 22, has been charged with misdemeanor battery and felony ID theft. Police confirm Brown has prior criminal records that include possessing of a weapon without a firearm owner's identification card. So she had a gun on her, an offense for which she pled guilty. Brown allegedly struck the victim in the face and used her Link card to withdraw money. Okay, so you got your benefits card, your Illinois Link card that will allow you to go and, I guess, pretty easily take cash out. I mean, I wonder if she beat this woman to give her the PIN code or whatnot. Is this going to be used as a way to say, well, see, we just had those damn thumbprint readers, Doug. we could stop Miss Brown here from Lashia Brown from beating up people trying to go through this area of safe passage by the safe passage worker. I mean, it just goes on. It's just so stupid. It's really that bad. It's really that gangster in Chicago now. It's not just Israel that is in a pole position when it comes to U.S. politics. Been seeing more and more about Saudi Arabia in the headlines, and it's pretty disgusting what the Sultan, we call him Mr. Bandar Bush, has been doing. But I saw this headline, and I think it's worth a mention here. Human trafficking case against Saudi princess dismissed. If you've been watching this, and we've been keeping up with the story of this young princess, a human trafficking charge against the Saudi princess was abruptly dismissed Friday. Prosecutors were unable to support claims by a Kenyan maid who said she had to escape from her employer's condominium after having her passport taken and being forced to work long hours for meager pay. The announcement came during what had been expected to be an arraignment of Michelle Alayaban, or Alaban, who was 42. Looks really young. I'm surprised. 42 on the felony charge, punishable. Well, she's got her hair covered, so I can't really see her face too much. But I mean, you can just see her face. You can't see anything else. She might be gray. She's 42 on the felony charge, punishable by up to 12 years in prison. Orange County District Attorney Tony Rakakakala. So what's his name here? Rakakakis. It's a weird name. Told the judge that investigators tried to corroborate the allegations, but found the evidence did not support her claim. So, anyway, and it goes on and it describes how, actually what happened was the maid, for some unknown reason, couldn't make it to court. Who knows? She probably was paid off and said, it wasn't that bad. They were really actually nice to me. But, these people, and these are the good guys. These are the ones that we support and spend money with. The Saudi princes and the royal families and the Bin Laden cohorts in all of these countries and their syndicates and energy partners and a busto oil. You're like, oh man, is there a elite group of people that are working inside of our government and through these families that are all interlinked? And I know some of you out there are like, Doug, the Saudi Arabians are run by Zionists. I do know that. I do. And who runs who? Does the dog wag the tail or the tail wag the dog? They're all in it together. They should all be in orange jumpsuits. And we should stop giving them money. Let's start by not giving them money. All right, so, I wanted to talk about this for just a moment, that Rothschild Surrealist Ball. If you didn't see the photos, back in 1972, the Rothschilds had a Surrealist Ball with Salvador Dali. It's pretty fantastical, these pictures that came out on the internet, and we published them. Vigilant Citizen, I think, was the original publicator of these pictures from this ball. And it's pretty amazing. I mean, this is some stuff that Lady Gaga would go gaga over. And I'm just waiting for her to wear the Baphomet headdress and the rest of it. The Satan goat, the Baphomet. Anyway, the pictures speak for themselves. I mean, they're pretty wild. Even Salvador Dali giving his famous Dali pose in these surrealist ball pictures show how these elite families, just like everyone else, I mean, the one thing that runs through all is that they are infatuated with media and that they are part of and infatuated with Hollywood. Some interesting pictures of Liz Taylor, Liza Minnelli, and others that are participating in these. God only know what type of eyes wide shut Stanley Kubrick-esque parties are really doing. I know that some people, they're sacrificing babies. And blah, blah, blah. Maybe, or they're just some creepy folks. Either way, it's disturbing. And you just realize, wow, I mean, the difference between the average person and these people, leaps and bounds. But they have the same infatuation with Hollywood and trying to be cool, and you could see that in all of these, I mean, just ugly inbred Rothschild types trying to gleam on to the fame of these folks. And the same thing that these folks that are in Hollywood and in media that have fame but want, gazillions of dollars and want to meet the most powerful people. And you hear about it all the time. I mean, Sting, he's singing to despot dictators in the Caspian Sea. He's going to, he plays alongside many others, from J-Lo to, the Black Eyed Peas, for the worst people in the world. The worst people in the world. I mean, torturers, despots, dictators, and then you have the political Hollywood, the Bill Clinton types, the Clinton Global Initiative that caters and takes billions of dollars from these, well, maybe not billions, but at least hundreds of millions of dollars from these same folk, and then they'll chase you down. They'll chase you down over $10 that went to maybe somebody who allegedly had some tie to some group that wanted more free speech in Bahrain, and all of a sudden you're the terrorist. I never started an oil company with Bin Laden's brother. I never sold oil contracts to countries that have poor human rights records before the current dictator, a.k.a. elected leader, is dead, a.k.a. Genie Oil, Dick Cheney. Come on. Who's the terrorist, really? But people, that they buy into it. They really do, and it's kind of sad. But when you see these pictures, like at these surrealist balls, I mean, it puts it all in perspective. You're like, wow, these people truly are out of control. Completely. I don't know if you've heard the latest propaganda that's coming out, but they've been pushing this meme, the sexual jihad that's happening in the Middle East. If you're not familiar, sexual jihad. They're saying that Tunisian women are going to Syria to relieve holy warriors and return pregnant with little jihadist babies. This is so ridiculous. And not just ridiculous, because I mean, really, is this really happening? Is this really an issue? Should we watch out for this? I mean, maybe it is, giving comfort to soldiers, helping the insurgents, the al-Qaedars, to continue their jihad. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? Now, if you think about it really, honestly, a lot of these guys are into girly boys and things like that, but I'm sure there's plenty of heterosexual men that need women, and by golly, they are alleging that this is happening. It's kind of funny, though, because as much as we've tried to wink, not radicalize the Muslim world, it seems that there's a lot of radicalization that's happening here. So I don't know if there's any truth to this, if they're actually waging this sexual jihad, if holy warriors are really going and returning pregnant with more jihadi babies. But the story itself is pretty funny. I mean, when you start looking at all the sex aspect of it, and the propaganda during World War I and World War II here in the United States. I wish I had some of the clips. I wasn't planning on parlaying it into this, but the whole idea that you should dance with GIs, you should help the boys. And that was a huge push by the U.S. government to basically get women to have sex with soldiers. And in the movies, they had these big balls that are galas that soldiers would attend, and they would come to dances, and they would court young women who would basically give them a little sexual gratification for Uncle Sam. So it's not so much that I think it's funny that this is being talked about, but it's also funny that they're demonizing it and making it sound so radical. But these are the same things that our government knows are very important. And when it comes to supplying the soldiers with what they need to get the job done, every once in a while it has to happen. You're either going to have a bunch of chronic masturbators, or you're going to have some women there. Or you're going, and the reality is in the U.S. military, you just have all the dudes raping women. 80%. I don't know if it's really true, but they're saying 80% of women that go into the U.S. military are raped. And how many people send their children, their daughters, into the military thinking that this is a great move for them? A lot of people, a lot more than you would think, are proud of my Navy daughter. I saw a bumper sticker this week on the back of a minivan. I'm just like, wow, must not read much. Must not look at too many statistics, because it's pretty horrible. Anyway, I think coming up this week, you're going to have a lot of talk of why we need to keep government going. Now, Obama has his Nixon moment, and if you didn't hear this, we'll just go ahead and play it. It's a little bit, but this is what's being played over and over again, and it's from Liberty, Missouri.
That's the strategy they're pursuing. House of Representatives just voted on it today. Now, I tell you what, Missouri.
Missouri.
The American people have worked too hard.
Too
for
hard.
Too long.
Too long.
Digging out of a real crisis just to let politicians in Washington cause another crisis.
Yeah, okay. Maybe, yeah, I agree, sort of. Sure.
This is the United States of America. We're not some banana republic. This is not a deadbeat nation.
What?
We don't run out on our tab. We're the world's bedrock investment. The entire world looks to us to make sure the world economy is stable. We can't just not pay our bills.
Okay, so there you go. It's not really about the American people. It's the world economy. Now, he's telling you this. Okay, we're not a banana republic. We're not Zimbabwe. We don't just print money and then one day tell you to not start shoving it down the toilet paper because it's valueless because of our bad central economic policy. No. The rest of the world is dependent upon us. So the decisions that are made in the executive branch are not for you. I mean, it's just one takeaway. They're not worried about you. They're worried about you working because the rest of the world relies on us.
And even threatening something like that is the height of irresponsibility.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, he goes on and bashes the Republicans for threatening to defund the government. And that's become a new sad gut check, I guess. It's the only thing that makes sense, and that is to just shut down government. The only way you can do that is to defund the government. It doesn't mean that the government won't still try to run, but defunding it, whether it's positive or negative is pretty subjective, I guess. I think that there are certain things that should be shut down in government, but if you just defund it, there's no way that people in government will make the right decision to fund or defund the right things. The people that will make sure that they are still funded and that are still relevant will ultimately resort to thievery and or hurting others to get said budgets. You got to have some terrorism to keep that terrorism budget going. Got to have something break to be able to keep getting that money to repair something. Everybody finds a reason why their job is important, their division. Why? Because they depend on it just like the rest of the world that depends on the U.S. economy to be the engine of empire. And you're damn right, because their governments have been buying useless, worthless debt from the U.S. for quite some time, trying to prop up their own bad decisions. But this is the popular idea. Okay, rather than changing the laws, rather than not voting for things like Obamacare, maybe they can possibly just use nullification or derail it because of the shaming the government or the president into feeling bad or taking responsibility for Obamacare or the lack thereof. So the government needs more money. We know that the $16,699.99.99 million that it was frozen at for up to 6 months is much higher than 17 trillion. The government didn't stop spending money. The government didn't stop going into debt, and it just froze. It just froze. No more debt. And I thought that was kind of a foreboding example of government failure. The Government Accountability Office, all people that are watchdogs and monitoring, and the budgeteers, what they've been doing is basically just robbing from the federal pensioners, and that's the lender of last resort. Beyond the Federal Reserve, it goes right down to the people's pensions and the money they've invested in government. So that's where they are plucking this from. But this is a constant threat. They are using it as such. And that is to shut down the government. Perfect example is in Detroit. They stopped. They didn't have any money for paper. They had lost some paper contract, and whoever was working to make that happen or paying those bills defaulted. And Detroit just decided that they were not going to issue death certificates. Now you say, that's pretty funny, right? They can't issue death certificates. You know, it's funny until you're trying to get some insurance policy on the deceased and they don't have a death certificate. You're like, hey, I need this money. We have to pay the estate. He had taxes. We have to take care of this. Otherwise, we're going to lose the home. And they're like, sorry, you don't have a death certificate. Then it becomes a real personal moment where you see government failing you individually. And that's just one of many examples of that. The FOIA request, the government has to give you information about the things it does. If you want to know where your money's going, you can put forward a Freedom of Information Act form, a FOIA request, rather, and the government should, in some speedily, timely fashion, respond to your request and give you said information if they can or want to. Most cases, they do. Just might take them a while. Well, now they've decided to stop giving that information out because the fax machine that they used for FOIA requests broke at the CIA. They broke, right? Well, what can you do? All you can do is fix it. Well, they decided that was something that would be sequestered. Now, I think that they fixed it at this point, but there were several weeks where there were reports that, no FOIA requests are going through and they have no money to fix the fax machine, and so the department's just not going to do anything. And you think about that and how insane that really is, that this government agency that is, this department in government and the CIA that is supposed to disseminate information to those that need it and want it, just decided, we're sequestered, sorry. So what's the government going to sequester if the Republicans shut it down? What are they going to target? It's going to be completely politicized, and that's what they're, the whole, they just want us to go backwards. They want to make sure that you're paying more. So if you start paying more at the doctor's office and in insurance premiums, Obama's going to blame the Republicans, and the Republicans are going to blame Obamacare, and the debate will rage on. And so regardless of who wins the hearts and minds of the American people, and it's going to take a while and they'll probably be divided regardless, they are going to get higher bills with less service at the doctor in a lot of cases. Anyway, I like when I see that people are catching on. A lot of people always say, well, they're sheeple, they're stupid, the general public doesn't catch on. I think they absolutely do. Knowing and being able to change the current reality that you have because of said knowledge is two different things. Knowing you're broke doesn't just help you out because you know that you can't spend any money. It doesn't necessarily give you illumination, doesn't give you the tools necessarily that you need to fix the situation. But people are catching on that Barack Obama is not working for them. 7 in 10 Americans, that's 70%. 70% of people think government is for the banks and big corporations and not the people. And that's just huge. I can't stress how big this new report is from Pew. And I say that because to get 70% of anybody, any group, any demographic, no matter how skewed, I mean, even if you really focus on just, rednecks in Missouri. What do you think about Obamacare? I hate it. Not to diminish our Missouri listener base, but I've met some pretty crazy people. I have some good friends that are from Missouri and big Kansas City Chief fans. They're really excited, tweeting all sorts of stuff at me about their new coach and how excited they are about it. But beyond that, beyond the Kansas City Chiefs, there is this report, and regardless of how skewed you make your report, to get 70% of anybody to actually believe in agreement, in consensus, is pretty shocking. For or against. So 72% of people, of the poor, and 71% of middle class believe government policies, fiscal and monetary, have done little or nothing to help them. Of course, this will be skewed by the academics, as Santilli recently explained regarding the arrogance of intellectuals. That's right. No, the people are just out of touch. They haven't had Cass Sustein and the others that want to steer the conversation. They haven't heard enough spin yet. So that's the dilemma. That's the dire straits they find themselves in. It's not that it's true. It's just that they don't understand. They're just too stupid to get it. Yes, that's why they belabor that aspect of this. No, it's because people can see what's happening. You can tell me all day long that what is not a recession is a recovery, and you can say that repetitively, and there's just, myself and 70% of you, and they that will not buy it. They're just not going to, we're not going to entertain the silliness, the notion. So anyway, people just don't get it. But when 69% of all Americans, according to Pew, say large banks and financial institutions have been most benefited by those and the government in the post-recession policies, communications policies are not just going bad, people are not buying the propaganda anymore. That's the tragedy that many in politics and at the Federal Reserve see. Despite who ends up being the Federal Reserve chairman, everybody's so excited that they got rid of Larry Summers. And yeah, he's a scumbag fascist that got rid of Glass-Steagall, that is one of the Rockefeller 300 that made himself millions of dollars for his personal hedge fund that is really despicable. So he profited off of tragedy. I can't think of anybody better to put into the Federal Reserve. He might as well have been there all along. He sleeps during the meetings. He would at least be somebody that we would be able to hate and rally around. That's why they now have this other lady who's just going to print more paper. She's going to make more debt, more obligations, continue to expand the buying and intervention that is going on centrally through, at some point, buying stocks directly and buying real assets and intervening in new markets that they have never tapped into to try to create inflation. So don't get excited about her. But, the message is clear. It's very clear, and that is that people, no matter how much you tell them that you work for them, at some point, you're going to have to show them. They're going to actually have to benefit from this. And Larry Summers, he said something that's very accurate. He said that we have a statistical incline and that we have a human decline. We have a recession for humanity, but we have an economic boom for government. It's true. It's true. Jobs, not so much. Jobless recovery. How do you get people to believe that? I don't know. I don't know how you do it, and they're not doing a good job of it because obviously I wouldn't be doing this podcast. Nobody would be listening to it if it was very effective. So, with that being said, I want to thank all the people that tweeted me this week. Pat Miletich retweeted us, which is pretty cool. He's a MMA fighter and somebody I used to watch beat up people, and now he is on Twitter and a follower of BLN and tweeting out to other people that need to be punched in the face, probably in many cases, stuff from the show. So that's really cool. Found some interesting followers. Andre Ortiz, look him up on Twitter. He has this new shirt that I hope comes to print called Brother Bird, and it looks like the Iron Eagle that you see on the Federal Reserve and much of the iconography in government with an all-seeing eye. And I hope it goes to print. If you go to the Cotton Barrel, just look up his name on Twitter, and he's got all of that linked up there. If you follow us on Twitter, the Doomcast show that we did with Charlie McGrath had a great response, and we use a lot of the social media, the Twitter sphere, to promote that. So if you follow us on Twitter, whether it's Blacklisted News, BLN Radio, or Doomcast Show, I think it is Doomcast Show. All of those are the handles on Twitter. You can pretty much find out when the impromptu adjunct episodes of blacklistednews.com and the Doomcast are live. We do that every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Or there-ish, but usually we do it on Wednesdays, if not Thursdays. If something happens, we just reschedule them. That's a nice aspect of doing the podcast. We did get a few donations, one of which was notable. Sarah, I want to thank her. Actually, it was $20 for Blacklisted News and for the Doomcast show. And I wanted to read her comment here. I thought I had it printed up. Sorry about that, Sarah. She made it all the way to the end of the program here. I appreciate you sending that and your kind words. Basically, appreciation for what we're doing on that podcast, which is a weekly hour or so, which is really fun to do. So, we continue to thank you for the support and the monetary contributions and your voice and using it to promote the show and let other people know that there are alternatives to some of the crap that you'll find on your AM and FM dial. And people aren't buying it. This show is for 70% of the population. That's the great thing about it, is that it used to be really hard. It used to be really hard to find other people that are catching on to what's happening today. And now there's just more and more of them. So thank you for that. You can always go to blacklistedradio.com. That is where we have the podcasts, and you can subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio. We have a Roku app, so you can listen to all of the shows on your Roku if you have that. And there's a lot more there. There's a lot more that we didn't cover and that we will be covering through the week for sure. So keep yourself up to date with the newsletter, and thank you. Thank you so much for being part of it. All right, so, and to you in the chat room, kudos. Thank you for keeping the gut check alive with the audio streams and the technical aspect of the show. All of you producers there. And I will be back next Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time for another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. Until then, take care.